Before Operation Epic Fury began, the USS Abraham Lincoln had been sitting in the Arabian Sea for weeks, doing something that looked from the outside like nothing. No strikes, no visible action. Carrier air wings flying routine patrols. Destroyers maintaining formation. The ship moving in slow patterns hundreds of miles from the Iranian coast. What was actually happening was the construction of a kill chain so complete and so detailed that when the order came at H-hour on February 28, 2026, the Lincoln Strike Group knew exactly where every relevant Iranian military asset was, how it was connected to the broader Iranian command structure, what it would take to destroy it, and how long each weapon would need to travel from launch to impact. The kill chain is one of the most important concepts in modern military operations, and it is almost never discussed in public reporting on naval warfare. Understanding it is the key to understanding not just what happened on February 28th, but why Iran's military spent weeks unable to effectively respond to a strike group sitting hundreds of miles offshore. The kill chain is not a metaphor. It is a literal sequence of steps that must all be completed before a weapon can be fired at a target. The military version most commonly referenced is called F2T2EA: Find, Fix, Track, Target, Engage, Assess. Find. Identify that a target of military significance exists somewhere. Fix. Determine its precise location. Track. Maintain continuous awareness of its location as it moves. Target. Match a specific weapon to the target based on its characteristics, location, and the desired effect. Engage. Fire the weapon. Assess. Determine whether the weapon achieved its intended effect, and if not, begin the cycle again. Every step in this sequence requires information, and information requires sensors. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is one of the most sophisticated sensor networks ever assembled on a mobile military platform. At the center of the sensor picture is the Aegis Combat System aboard the strike group's Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. The USS Frank E. Peterson, Jr., the USS Spruance, and the USS Michael Murphy each carry the Spy 6 family of radar systems, a significant upgrade from earlier Spy 1 radars. Spy 6 is described in official Navy documentation as providing a 35 times improvement in sensitivity over its predecessor. It can track ballistic missiles in space, cruise missiles skimming the ocean surface, and small drone aircraft simultaneously while maintaining a complete three-dimensional picture of everything within its detection envelope. But the destroyers are only part of the picture. Operating above the strike group, the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye provides airborne early warning and command and control capability. The Hawkeye carries the AN/APY-9 radar, which can detect and track targets over distances and at angles that surface-based radars cannot cover due to the curvature of the Earth. In a carrier strike group, the Hawkeye is the elevated sensor platform that extends the group's awareness horizon far beyond what any ship can see from sea level. During the lead-up to Epic Fury, Hawkeyes from the Lincoln's Air Wing were flying around the clock, maintaining continuous sensor coverage over the approaches to the Persian Gulf, the Iranian coastline, and the Gulf of Oman. Above the Hawkeyes, American reconnaissance satellites provided imagery and signals intelligence that fed directly into the strike group's targeting picture. P-8. A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft flew patterns that covered the entire region, tracking Iranian naval movements and contributing acoustic and radar data to the intelligence picture. RC-135 reconnaissance aircraft monitored Iranian communications and electronic emissions. The result of all of these sensors operating simultaneously and feeding their data into the Lincoln Strike Group's Combat Information Center was a targeting picture of extraordinary completeness. Every Iranian naval vessel in the Gulf of Oman, the Arabian Sea, and the Persian Gulf had been located, identified, tracked, and had weapons assigned to it before the operation began. The kill chain had been completed all the way to the engage step for hundreds of targets. The only thing missing was authorization to fire. When authorization came, the weapons went. Understanding what the Aegis system actually does requires stepping back from the glamorous part, the missiles, and looking at the less glamorous part, the data processing. The Aegis combat system is fundamentally a computer network that ingests sensor data from multiple sources, correlates it into a coherent picture, assigns threats to available interceptors, and executes engagements faster than any human operator could manage manually. The engagement timeline for a ballistic missile threat can be measured in seconds. The threat detection, tracking, classification, weapon assignment, and intercept solution all have to be generated and executed within that window. The original Aegis system was designed in the 1970s and first deployed in the 1980s. It has been continuously updated since then. The version operating on the destroyers with the Lincoln in 2026 is a fundamentally different system from what was deployed in the Cold War, updated through a program called Speed to Capability that allowed the Navy to push software updates to deployed ships during the Red Sea campaign against Houthi threats in 2024 and 2025. Speed to Capability was developed precisely because the Houthi campaign revealed that the pace of adversary innovation was outrunning the Navy's traditional acquisition cycle. A new drone variant could appear in the Red Sea and be engaging American ships before the Navy had time to develop, test, and deploy a counter through normal procurement channels. Speed to Capability allowed software engineers at home to analyze the new threat, develop an updated engagement algorithm, and push it to deployed ships as a software update in the same way a smartphone receives an operating system update. By the time the Lincoln deployed to the Arabian Sea in preparation for Epic Fury, its escort destroyers were running Aegis software that incorporated lessons from hundreds of real engagements against Houthi drones and missiles. The system knew how to discriminate between threat types. It knew which interceptors were most effective against which threats at which ranges and altitudes. It had been tested in combat against an adversary that had been actively trying to defeat it for months. The offensive side of the kill chain is where the Lincoln's air wing becomes central. The Lincoln embarked Carrier Air Wing 9 during the Iran operation. CVW-9 included FA-18E and FA-18F, Super Hornets for strike missions, F-35C, Lightning II stealth fighters for missions requiring low observability, EA-18G Growlers for electronic warfare, E-2D Hawkeyes for airborne command and control, and MH-60 Seahawk helicopters for anti-submarine warfare and logistics. The F-35C deserves specific attention because its role in the kill chain goes well beyond its function as a strike aircraft. The F-35C carries the AN/APG-81 Active Electronically Scanned Array Radar, one of the most capable airborne sensors in the current inventory. It can track targets in all weather conditions, emit electronic warfare effects, and gather signals intelligence simultaneously. The aircraft's sensor fusion system combines data from its own sensors with data from external sources, including other aircraft, ships, and satellites, and presents the pilot with a unified picture that includes targets the pilot's own sensors cannot directly see. This means an F-35C flying a patrol over the Arabian Sea can be receiving targeting data from a Hawkeye 60 miles away, correlating it with data from an RC-135 even farther away, and contributing its own radar picture to the network, all simultaneously. Every F-35C in the air is simultaneously a strike platform, a sensor, and a data node in the kill chain network. Iran knew the Lincoln was there. Iranian radar could see the ship. Iranian intelligence tracked its movements. What Iranian planners could not see was the invisible architecture of the kill chain being built around their forces, the sensors watching them, the weapons assigned to them, the kill chain completed and waiting for authorization. When the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers opened their vertical launch system cells on February 28, 2026, Each Tomahawk cruise missile that came out of those tubes had already been programmed with a specific target, a specific route to that target, and a specific time of arrival calculated to match the time-on-target plan. The Lincoln's destroyers collectively carried hundreds of Tomahawks. Each Arleigh Burke-class destroyer carries up to 96 vertical launch cells. The cells can also carry SM-2, SM-3, and SM-6 interceptors for missile defense. The mix of offensive and defensive weapons in a destroyer's loadout is classified, but the volume of Tomahawks fired in the opening salvos of Epic Fury was sufficient to strike dozens of targets simultaneously. The Tomahawk Block 4 used in the Iran strikes includes a two-way data link that allows the weapon to be redirected to a new target after launch, a loitering capability that allows it to circle a target area waiting for authorization to strike, and a digital scene matching system that allows it to identify its target visually and make final guidance adjustments in the last seconds before impact. The data link capability is particularly significant. A Tomahawk fired at a specific Iranian naval vessel does not necessarily commit to that vessel at the moment of launch. If the vessel moves between launch and impact, the data link allows a controller to redirect the weapon. If intelligence reveals a higher priority target in the same area, the weapon can be diverted. The kill chain does not end when the weapon leaves the ship. It continues until the weapon reaches its final point of impact. The FA-18 Super Hornets launched from the Lincoln's flight deck on February 28th carried a mix of weapons calibrated for the specific requirements of their assigned strike packages. Joint Direct Attack Munition Kits, known as JDAMs, convert unguided bombs into precision-guided weapons by adding GPS guidance modules to their tail sections. A JDAM can be released from a Super Hornet at high altitude and still achieve accuracy within a few meters of its programmed target. The Joint Standoff Weapon, or JSOW, extends the range at which a strike aircraft can engage targets by gliding unpowered after release. A Super Hornet at high altitude can release a JSOW and have it glide more than 70 miles to its target, while the aircraft remains well outside Iran's air defense envelope. The AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missile was available for engagements against Iranian surface vessels that were underway rather than moored. The Harpoon homes on the radar signature of a surface ship and can be fired from aircraft, ships, or submarines. Each weapon was matched to each target through the targeting process that had been running for weeks before H-hour. The kill chain for hundreds of targets had been completed before the first round was fired. The assessment step produced the numbers that CENTCOM briefed in the days after the operation began. More than 20 Iranian naval vessels struck or sunk. Hundreds of Iranian ballistic missile launchers destroyed. Iranian air defense networks severely degraded. The Shahid Bagheri drone carrier destroyed at Bandar Abbas. The Iris Dina sunk by torpedo in the Indian Ocean. The 11 Iranian warships that had been in the Gulf of Oman before the operation reached zero within 48 hours. Vice Admiral Bradford Cooper, commanding U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, said the Navy had the Iranians backed into their own ports and described the operation as ahead of the game plan. What that summary does not capture is the months of preparation that preceded it. The sensors watching Iranian forces for weeks, the analysts building the targeting database, the logisticians positioning weapons and fuel in advance, the software engineers updating Aegis engagement algorithms based on Red Sea combat experience. The kill chain is not activated at H-hour. It is built over months. H-hour is simply when the find, fix, track, and target steps that have already been completed are followed by the engage step. When all of that preparation compressed into a single morning in the Arabian Sea, the result looked, from the outside, like an overwhelming and rapid American military victory. From the inside of the Lincoln's Combat Information Center, it looked like a plan executing on schedule. This is Naval Depth. Subscribe and stay with us as this story continues. There is one element of the kill chain that this video has not yet addressed, and it is perhaps the most important: the human beings who operate it. The Combat Information Center aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln is a space roughly the size of a small classroom, filled with consoles, screens, and controllers. During Operation Epic Fury, it was manned continuously, 24 hours a day, by sailors whose job was to monitor the incoming sensor data from every platform in the strike group's network, correlate it into a coherent tactical picture, and manage the engagement decisions that were coming at them from multiple directions simultaneously. These are not officers who have spent years in graduate school studying warfare theory. Most of them are in their early 20s. Some came from small towns in the middle of the country and had never seen an ocean before they enlisted. They received intensive training in the specific systems they operate. They practiced the scenarios in simulators. They ran exercises against mock adversaries designed to be as realistic as possible. But the simulator is not combat. In combat, the contact reports are real. The weapons assignments are real. The order to fire carries real consequences that cannot be reset when the exercise ends. The Aegis system can execute certain engagement decisions automatically, without human input, when the threat timeline is too compressed for human decision-making. A ballistic missile in its terminal phase approaching the strike group at multiple times, the speed of sound provides seconds, not minutes, for decision. The system fires. The human supervisor can override, but in practice, when the threat profile matches a pre-approved engagement criterion, the machine acts. The kill chain in its most compressed form is largely automated. But the decisions about which criteria to pre-approve, which targets to program into the tomahawks, which areas to declare as free fire zones, and which to treat with additional caution, all of those decisions are made by human beings working with incomplete information under stress. The sailors in the Lincoln's CIC on February 28th managed that stress. The kill chain they had spent weeks building executed. The weapons hit their targets. The ship launched aircraft continuously throughout the operation. That performance does not happen without training. It does not happen without leadership. It does not happen without the institutional culture that the U.S. Navy has built over generations of carrier operations. The technology gets the attention. The kill chain and the F2T2EA sequence get the analytical treatment. But underneath all of it are the people who make it work when it matters. That is the part of the kill chain that never shows up on the diagram. This is Naval Depth. Subscribe and stay with us as this story continues.